Hey folks, in this episode of This Week in Photo, it's going to be all about how to get started in wedding photography. This is TWiP. Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Really cool show today. We're going to be talking about the ins and outs of the business of wedding photography. I've assembled a couple of people that are going to take us through the beginning and the ending of how you do a wedding, how you shoot it, what are some of the ups, some of the downs, what's the gear involved with it, how do you bill people, how do you figure out what you're going to charge, how do you charge them after you figure out what you're going to charge. All these questions, hopefully we'll get to them within the next hour or so. So here to talk about those things with me are my two guests, Mr. Troy Miller, who's in the middle. What's up, Troy Miller? What's going on?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about this. And then also we have Benjamin Edwards, who's brand new to the TWiP universe. Benjamin, welcome, man.
Yay!
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. You're coming to us. Yeah. Like I was telling you before we started, you have the distinction of being the first guest that has done an episode of TWiP from outside, I think. You were outdoors.
And as we talked about, like you want to control the environment when you're on a call like this, and my house with the children in there is not a controllable environment. So we're outside doing it Pacific Northwest style tonight.
I love it. I love it. Cool. Well, good. It's good to have you. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time, especially during dinner time, right? So. It is right. TWiP is right smack dab in the middle of dinner time. But before we get started, let's do some just quick housekeeping. Benjamin, let's start with you. So give us a little bit about your background. You know, what got you started in photography, and what kind of photographer are you beyond the wedding photographer stuff?
Sure. Yeah. Weddings, portraits, a lot of commercial work. I've kind of delved into the film, video film stuff in the last couple of years. I think it's a natural progression for still photographers to move into that. So yeah, I got my start about 16 years ago, started kind of shooting weddings on the side. I was working in a fine arts department at a college and always had a love of the arts. But it wasn't really until my wedding was photographed about 17 years ago. Kevin Kubota, a dear friend of mine, shot my wedding. Yeah. And that's when I saw like the power of a still image, and I was hooked. And so, like most people, I went out and took a second mortgage out of my house and started a business.
There you go. That's how it's easy as that, right? So,
yeah, it's simple.
Troy Miller, what about you, man? What for the folks that aren't familiar with you, what's your origin story as it pertains to wedding photography?
I got into photography because my wife bought me a camera when we were I was like 18, and I was like, ooh, I dig this, so I got really into it, and I've been doing it ever since. Today is actually the 26th anniversary of my first wedding that I've ever shot.
What? Congratulations!
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Today's 26. Yeah. So, I when I get into things, I get into them big. So I don't have a lot of hobbies because I don't have that many resources and time. But photography was one of those things for art that just really spoke to me. Yeah. And so, just one day I was in the bottom of a swimming pool doing construction, and I decided I am not doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I talked. Both of you guys may be familiar with this, but I talked to a lot of photographers. I love to hear the origin story of how you got started, or what was, I call it the radioactive spider that bit you, right? So what was your radioactive spider? And it's different for everyone, but there's that common thread of touching photography and then it's sticking. Right? It's like, I love this stuff, and then you sort of solve for, okay, well, if I love this, maybe I can make a living at it and stop doing that other thing that I don't love so much. So I want to start with that from that standpoint. Benjamin, I want to dive into that with you. So, when there's this book called I think it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that talks about the sort of the myth of, okay, I have this hobby and I'm really good at it, like say it's building ships in a bottle or something. I'm really good at this hobby, and you know what? I'm gonna make money from this. So you decide to make it a business and figure out that there's much more to it than making a couple phone calls. Then you start resenting the business, and then that thing that you loved becomes the thing that you hate. Right? So tell me about your journey through that. Have you Was it like that for you at all? And what do you say to that sort of, the dichotomy of changing your love into your nemesis?
Yeah, wow, I can't identify with that at all. Right?
Yeah.
I'm still on that journey. Every day I have to wake up and think, okay, this is my passion, and this is something I feel like I'm meant to do. But I got to answer a bunch of emails, and I need to sweep the studio floor, and you know what I mean? Like, there's so much more to it that I didn't understand when I took out that second mortage, right?
Yeah.
I wish I maybe would have taken some business courses or something along the way.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for me, it's a everyday choice that I have to make to say this is something that I love, and I do love it. But I think there's pros and cons with anything, and so you have to train your thoughts to stay on the positive and not get weighed down by the difficult things,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Troy Miller, what about you? So that sort of journey of, I love this. Like you mentioned being in the bottom of a pool and cleaning that, and then having that epiphany moment. Are you still as excited as the day that when you had that moment, or when your wife bought you that camera, as you are today with your 27th wedding? What was it?
This is 26 years, yeah.
26 years, sorry. 26 years in wedding photography, yeah.
Yeah.
So hundreds of weddings.
And Margie looked them up on Facebook, and they're still married.
Oh,
so,
look at that.
Yeah, she sent him a message. I don't know if we've heard back yet, but that's kind of cool.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah. It comes and goes. It comes and goes. So for me, I go through these periods of burnout. And it's like every 5 to 7 years, I kind of get burned out, and I need to find something else in photography to get me sort of excited about it. I mean, I love weddings because they're hard. There's a lot of people that won't do weddings because they're hard, but that's why I like them.
Yeah.
I like them because they're hard. Digital was when I switched to digital, that was sort of my last little bump that really got me excited, because I'm like, holy crap, I don't have to change film. You mean I can just make it sepia or black and white if I want? I don't have to pull the roll out, And then now it's the latitude that the cameras have that get me excited, and then mirrorless and shooting fine art and things that blow up, and then I go shoot a wedding. So it's all in that same universe for me.
Yeah, and along with that, I'm always curious with genres like weddings, where there's a distinct customer, the bride, ostensibly, right? So there's the bride that you are creating for, and there's the expectation of what images need to be in that final product, whether it's an album or wall prints or loose prints or whatever. So there's an expectation that there's a certain series of prints or images that you're going to capture. How do you guys, Troy, let's start with you. How do you guys work through staying creative and staying energized while knowing that the wedding that I shot 3 weeks ago, I need to capture similar images this weekend at this wedding? How do you introduce your creative juices into that so that you stay excited about it?
Well, for me, there's 3 parts to a wedding day. There's all the safe shots. Mm-hmm. There's all the shots that I have to get, even if they're not perfect, right? Like, I got to get a shot of mom hugging, whatever. Then there's the traditional look at the camera, got to show the front of the dress, the back of the dress, holding hands, looking at, then there's my time. Then there's my part. And I try to squeeze those into every part of the day. And luckily, our clients hire us because they see the type of work that we do. They see what our albums look like. And I make no excuses. Like, I shoot with a fisheye. I'm going to shoot with a fisheye at your wedding because that's what I like to shoot. So we get along really well. I'm very fortunate that my couples like my work. So I get to go create it. I do all the safe stuff, but they want me to go do the crazy stuff.
Yeah. And that's where you introduce the creativity and your personal look into the formula. Benjamin, what about you? How do you stay creative with this stuff? How do you keep those juices flowing?
Yeah, I'd really piggyback off of that and say it's the same thing. I look forward to looking at each client and their relationship and trying to find something unique and trying to find something that I want to work on. For instance, like, I love fire, so I want to go play with steel wool in a cave at a wedding. Yeah. There's a resort here that has a cave on site, and so looking at each wedding and trying to find one thing that I can do that I haven't done before. But I think also doing the commercial week or the commercial work during the week helps me to sharpen some skills and look at things in a different way, kind of have like a palate cleanser between each wedding.
Yeah.
I think that really helps.
Commercial work as the wasabi of wedding photography, right?
I like it.
There you go.
Can coin that.
That could be a book title.
It would be the ginger, wouldn't it? The ginger.
Oh, you're
palate
right.
cleanser.
The ginger is the palate. Sorry. Yeah. Clearly, I'm not a sushi person. So.
Get those ginger jobs. I like that.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears away from the creativity stuff and talk a little bit about the demeanor stuff. From my standpoint, not being a wedding shooter, it takes a certain demeanor to be able to, almost like a photojournalist / psychologist, right? Because you have, it takes,
absolutely,
right?
Yes.
You got to be able to work under the gun and produce a product. You got one shot at it. Relatively speaking, you got one shot at it, you got to produce, but at the same time, you're working in an environment where it's probably one of the most stressful days in many people's lives is getting married, and, the whole family, both sides are there, and, a lot of everything you've done worked up to this moment, and you're the one that's charged with recording it. So there's drama, I'm sure, that happens from time to time.
Yeah. Not at my weddings. What?
Well, Benjamin, start with that. So how do you manage that, and what kind of demeanor for the people that are watching this are like, I saw that title and I'm thinking about wedding photography. What kind of person does it take? Because I know, you can't be a hothead and going off every 10 seconds because something didn't go right. What kind of person does it take to be a
nothing goes right, by the way.
Yeah. Troy, do things go right in your weddings? Like, I don't know.
They just go less wrong.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I don't know if there's like a prescription for the right person, but I would say, having done as many weddings as we have, you just start to understand that things are going to take place when they take place. Yeah. And you are going to deal with so many different kinds of people. And so going into it, just knowing that things may go wrong, some things may go right, and you are there to document all of that. And I try to just be, I tell people, like, I'm not a fly on the wall, and I'm not going to come in and rule the day. It's not my way or the highway. There's somewhere in between. Like, there are things that I can help facilitate. And I think more than anything, I just try to be there for the bride, for the couple, not just to take amazing photos, but to genuinely be there. If she needs a drink of water, I'm there. If mother of the bride is being difficult, I'll try to pull her aside and have a little side conversation and try to find some positives. So I think there's so much more to it than just going in and being a fly on the wall and documenting the day. I think you've got to be there truly to serve your clients in all sorts of ways.
Well, and some photographers I know will say, well, I'm a service and I'm here to do a job, and that's take pictures. That whole psychological, making sure the bride feels okay, the mother-in-law is not freaking out. That's the bridesmaids or whoever. That's their job. My job is to make sure I document the freaking out, right? So,
yeah, well, that's interesting. That is an approach, and for me, I've found that knowing that business is relational, and the best things in my life that have happened have become from a result of good relationships. So I think going into it, trying to have the best relationships with the couple, with the mother or the bride, having those great interactions, ultimately it's going to yield a better result, I feel. Yeah.
Well, Troy, what about you? First start with the demeanor side of it. Like, what kind of person does it take? I know you personally, and I know you have the patience of an elephant, right? So, until you don't, but you have. But how do you? What kind of person, for the people that are watching this and want to jump into it, how do they do sort of self-assessment to know if they're the right fit for this kind of genre?
You have to be malleable. You have to be willing to make changes on the fly throughout the day and not be offended that the bride is an hour and a half late. Mm-hmm. You can't be mad at her for that. I mean, the hair and makeup. I mean, it's the hair and makeup did it, but you can't be mad at them because when she shows up, you have to be able to make things work. And you got to remember, on wedding days, people are watching. And not just one people, 400 people are watching you. Yes. And they all have cell phones and cameras. And so you got to be conscious of that. And on the wedding day, it's the only time that I can see the future. Because on a wedding day, I can spot the groomsman who I'm going to have to pay a little more attention to, or who's the guy or who's the gal that I can pick on the most, or, how far can I push these people? So I think that all personalities can do weddings, but not all personalities are going to be able to do them the best.
Yeah.
And I think that your couples want to have a good time. They want to have fun. And the photography really just needs to happen. They don't really need to know what you're doing. They need to be comfortable, because if they're uncomfortable, they're going to look at the photos and they're not going to be as good.
Right.
But if they had a great time and you made them laugh and the images are amazing, right? Like how we would look at it, they're going to remember them as amazing. Like, oh God, Benjamin was so much fun. We had a great time. And I might go, dude, it's a little out of focus, and they don't care.
Yeah.
So you got to have fun with them too. So all personalities will kind of fit, but it helps.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. So here's a curveball, though. So, and this is for both of you. Benjamin, you can take this first, and Troy, so you can formulate your answer after Benjamin gets off the hot seat.
Taking notes.
So let's talk about women, right? So there you go. There's a hot button. So in all seriousness, over the past, say, decade or so, 15 years, the wedding genre has shifted from being a male-dominated industry to being, I would argue, female-dominated these days for many good reasons. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong, because clearly I'm an outsider, but from the female photographer being able to go places a male photographer can't go during the setup, and those sorts of things. Some people say women are more empathetic than men. I don't know if that's true or not, but Benjamin, from your standpoint, have you seen that? From an industry standpoint, have you seen sort of the tides shift towards females being dominant when it comes to wedding photographers? And if so, does that play into that whole demeanor part of the question that I asked earlier?
That's a great question, and I'm going to try to play it safe here.
Well, Troy's taking notes, so
Yeah,
he's like, that guy got blown up in the minefield. I'm not going through that.
I have. It's interesting. I have seen that shift, and I guess I looking at my experience, like I feel like I'm a kind of a sensitive dude, and there's just about no place, or I've seen just about everything on a wedding day. But I have seen that shift. And, my wife and I had this conversation. She used to shoot with me before we started having more and more kids. And she would look at things in a different way. I think it's safe to say that men and women we're just wired differently. And so she would approach a situation or a time during the wedding in a completely different way and look at it in a way that I just didn't even think about approaching it. And so I think, husband and wife teams have kind of a good thing going there when they can kind of tag team each other and look at the day in different ways and think, well, you're really great at shooting that, and I'm great at shooting this. Do they have an advantage?
Yeah.
I think it's just different.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good answer. Troy Miller, now you have an advantage, based on what Benjamin is saying, because you are a husband and wife team. Right. So does it work like that, where you're like, you know what, she's getting dressed and she's in her whatever, you go in there, honey, I'm going to go out here and get these other shots? Or are you comfortable enough to go in there and be like, hey, I'm the wedding photographer, I don't care, I've seen it all, I can do it? What's your stance on that?
It's all up to the bride. A lot of times when we're getting ready to do that, I'll be saying, okay, I can step out if you like and get some shots you getting in the dress. Probably 80% of the time, they don't want to be photographed getting in their dress. That's just for us, most of our brides. So it's a non-issue. Usually Margie will stay in to help them get in the dress. And I am really good at tying a corset dress. I can tie one in 7 minutes. So a lot of times I've come back in and had to tie those things.
Wow.
I would say, though, it definitely does help to have a female assistant, if anything else, because not all brides are going to be comfortable with their male photographer climbing up their dress to fix an underlayer, right? Yeah. And the ladies may not know how to do that. So that can be really helpful. Not really a necessity, but it can be helpful. As to the photographers, the male or female photographers, I mean, a good photographer is a good photographer. It doesn't matter. You should be able to shoot a good day. The client doesn't know what you don't shoot. So yes, this other photographer or woman may see something slightly different, but you can't give them 10,000 images either.
Yeah.
My clients are going to end up with like 500 images. So we could pick somewhere in that path, but as long as you shoot something that they love, they don't know that they didn't get this cool shot of the garter hanging on the doorknob with they don't know that, you know?
Yeah. Interesting.
That's a great point. I don't know that you could like look at a series of images and be like, oh, a male shot that, or that's definitely a female photograph right there. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, just, Troy, you gave yourself away by the fact that you know the terminology of underlayer. Right? So, it's like, not everybody knows what an underlayer is. I can guess, but
yeah, I could tell you, and I'm sure Benjamin can too, that you'll be standing in a room with a bunch of girls getting ready, and you hear things that you're probably not going to repeat, and you know the names of things and the candidness. But that's also when the best images happen, because now they're comfortable with you, male or female, it doesn't matter. They're cool that you're there. Yeah. And so when you take them out and you're like, I'd really like it if you stood on that table. Okay, I'm on the table because, You've
already been under my dress. You might as well. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's good.
All about relationship. All about relationship.
Yeah.
And if I could add to the relationship thing,
sure.
See, we do an engagement session for all of our couples. It's required. And by the time I'm done with that engagement session, we're all friends. So when I get to the wedding, it's hugs and, hey, Troy, how you doing? You want to have a drink with us? And it's like we're already friends. So there's a trust factor there that's huge. And that makes a difference in the quality of images. So again, doesn't matter, male or female. You got to build that trust, and you can go a long way.
Well, how important are second shooters? I know a lot of wedding photographers add the second shooter option as an option to their overall packages, for an extra X hundred or $1,000, I'll bring a second or third photographer with me, and this is why. Do you guys do that, Benjamin? Do you bring on a second shooter, or do you give that option to your brides? And if so, is it important to have one there?
So I used to offer it as an upsell or as an addition, and what I found over time was. I can't be in two places at once. And there are valuable images that me having single coverage, I can't get. Yeah. So if I'm, down, getting shots of them walking down the aisle, I can't be back at the building watching that moment between father of the bride and the bride. Like, I just can't be there. I can't get that intimate moment. So this year, starting in 2018, I started including 2 photographers in every package and pricing accordingly. But I just don't do single coverage anymore because it's too valuable. There's too many moments that I could miss. If a bride is really interested in having tons of family photos taken during cocktail hour, and then she comes back and says, well, I don't have any pictures of cocktail hour. It's like, well, you wanted like 4,000 family photos, and I couldn't be in 2 places at once. So,
right. And she's like, that's not my problem, dude.
Yeah, like, you should have figured it out. Well, okay. Like, I think it is important we offer 2 photographers for that reason. Yeah.
Troy, what about you? Yeah, I know you're a husband and wife team, so one of you is going to be a second shooter. Is it important for people that are watching this? Should they build that in and not consider shooting a wedding without another heartbeat there to help them? Or is it possible to do a saleable job or a great job solo?
Oh, it's absolutely possible to do it solo, especially, if you're really well prepared, your gear, you got your backups, you got everything right there. Of course, you can do it. You can do it solo. But it's not ideal. Even if you don't have a second shooter, you should have an assistant, Absolutely. Even if it's just a friend, because, you're like, oh, crap, I left the 400 in the car. I'd really like the 400. Look at this aisle. Look how long it is. I want the 400. Well, is it worth it to you to go get it?
Yeah.
Nah, probably not. Breaking down, carrying gear, just safely moving the bride's dress. Somebody needs to help her carry that. The bridesmaids aren't trained to do that. You need to be able to help. So absolutely, second shooters, I think, are critical, like Benjamin said, during the ceremony, during all kinds of things, that other view that you just can't get without a second person.
Yeah.
But at the very least, an assistant. You need a Sherpa. You need somebody to carry your stuff. If the worst case.
I think, and from what I hear, and I've shot a couple of weddings in my couple of decades on the planet, and that seems mandatory. And from what I'm calling from you guys, the minimum is you and a Sherpa. The preferred is you and at least one other competent photographer that you vetted that can get the shots that you're not, or allow you to be in 2 places at once, right? So listen.
Yeah, and
no, go ahead.
There's so many people. There's so many people that need to learn, that want to learn, that you shouldn't have a hard time finding an assistant.
Yeah.
So you can help train somebody, and that's always a good place to go.
Go down that route a little bit, because that's the thing. I mean, I sort of touched on that a little bit, having a competent person so that you can be in two places at once. But how do you find that person that you trust enough to get those shots? I mean, you could come back with, a 300 or 1,000 images that are out of focus or that are cropped weird or whatever. Benjamin, how do you vet people so that that you can trust? I mean, do you do an interviewing process? Do you look at their online portfolio? What's the process for that?
I definitely look at their portfolio, but kind of going along with relationships, I want to know that they're good with people. Mm-hmm. They could be the greatest second shooter or first shooter in the world, but if they show up and they're a jerk, like, that's hurting my business in more ways than just not great photography. Like, they've got to have great people skills. I'm currently, my 15-year-old son has been traveling the world with us and shooting weddings with me this year, and so cool. It's been fun to do that together and to show him what I'm looking for in imagery, but also let him kind of explore his, what is his look. So yeah, I think it's important to look at imagery. But you got to know that they're solid with other people, for sure.
All right. Well, let's segue into one of the biggest questions or one of the first questions that comes up when people are considering jumping into the genre as a business, and that's pricing. And how much should I charge? And should I just, do the shoot and burn thing where, hey, I just shoot and I'll give you a link to a Dropbox and you can go download everything and do whatever you want with it. I'm not going to process anything. You can handle all that. And I'm only going to charge you $500 and I'll be there for the wedding and part of the reception. Then I'm out, done. Versus like what you guys do is the full service weddings, which is obviously going to be much more than $500. Troy, how do people price themselves? How do you, if you're first considering going into this industry, how do you find out what the right price is for your particular area? Or if you're going to be a destination wedding shooter, for that, like what's the path of least resistance to getting it right?
It's kind of two answers, because when I started in photography, I asked one of my old instructors, how do I charge? And he says, whatever you charge is not enough. And I thought, what a jerk. Right. But the truth is that this is a service industry. So you're going to charge a fair price, but hopefully you're over delivering. So it's not exactly 1-to-1. Right. But with that said, going into this, like, don't charge just what everybody else in the field is charging. Charge what you're worth. Charge what you can.
I think I'm worth $1 million, but I doubt if anybody's going to pay me $1 million to shoot their wedding, right?
But the thing is, right? Okay, let's just roll with that, right? So let's say the three of us are photographing a wedding, and it starts pouring down rain.
Yeah. What
are the chances that you're now worth $1 million? What are the chances that Benjamin and I can pull this off because we've done it before? Or so it's the value of what you're worth for that price.
It's insurance. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean,
insurance is a commodity, right? So that's sort of devaluing the art of wedding photography and saying that, hey, I'm going to pay more so I can ensure that I get photos. So it's not insurance, but the brides are paying for your experience and your ability to deal with adverse situations and not come back later at proof time with excuses as to why you weren't able to get the wedding done. Is that right?
Yeah. So for a more direct answer, I would say start really cheap. I'm saying start $250, $500, and then once you've been able to comfortably handle a $500 wedding, then go do a $750 wedding, and then a $1,000 wedding. And the more you charge, the more that bride's going to expect from you.
Yeah.
And just keep that in mind. So under promise and over deliver.
Love that.
You can always raise your prices.
Yeah, Benjamin, do you agree with that? Start low and build.
I do, yeah, and I think I'd add too just the importance of mentorship, or if you're wanting to start out in the business, do an apprenticeship or shoot with somebody who's been doing this for a long time, because again, not just the imagery, but how does a wedding day work? Like, what is the construct of a wedding day? What does it look like? And how do I interact with people? There's so much more to it. So
that's
definitely,
huge,
yeah, you've got to price accordingly, but there's so much education that can be had just second shooting or assisting for an established wedding photographer.
Yeah. So is it a wrong strategy to say, you know what, I'm going into this business, so I'm gonna get on Google and I'm gonna look at people in my local area that have websites, and I'm going to find out what they charge, and I'm going to undercut all of them and go in, because brides don't know what's good and what's not good, so I can undercut, and they're going to go for me versus one of these guys that are charging thousands. I'm only going to charge $999 for my weddings. Does that work, Troy Miller? What do you think?
Yeah, go for it. That's awesome. You go do that because my brides, yeah, and you're going to work your butt off doing, 100 weddings a year, and I'm going to do 30. Yeah. And the thing is, the bride that hires you isn't going to hire me. So I'm not losing any business to you. Benjamin and I could have the same business in the same town, and I guarantee you we're going to have different brides because we're different styles and photographers. It's not all about the price point.
Right.
So go at all you want. You're not hurting the professionals. We're just
it's like you're dealing with a different demographic, right? That's divided by price point. I like to use the analogy of you could price yourself as Walmart, and you're going to get a certain kind of clientele. Let's say you're like buying jewelry, and you want to go buy jewelry from Walmart. That's a certain clientele versus the clientele that's going to say, I only shop at Tiffany's. Tiffany's is where I buy all my jewelry from, and because of reasons A, B, and C. Benjamin, do you agree with what Troy was saying about it doesn't matter, about the people that are on the race to the bottom because you're in a different sort of category altogether?
Yeah, and I think for the most part, let's be honest, nearly anybody can go out and if they work really hard throughout a day can manufacture some good images to have on a website. But I think today's couples can sniff that out. They can look at a website and see if this person is established, if they have experience, where have they shot, and certainly they can ask those questions. How many weddings have you done? I don't want the budget bride. I don't want the $500. I don't want the $2,000 client. Yeah. So you can have them. You can have them and learn and do great work for them. That's great, but that's not my clientele.
Yeah.
And I would even suggest that the other bases of photography and price points for all industries make it possible for our level of industry and our price point and the quality we produce. It makes it stand out, right? Like if there wasn't a McDonald's, then the gourmet burger joint wouldn't have their discernible difference.
Yeah. Yep.
And so everybody has a place. Like, do what you need to do. I shot $500 weddings for a long time.
Yeah.
To grow.
Yeah, and to piggyback on the whole McDonald's analogy, yeah, it's true. And there is a giant market for people that want to consume McDonald's for whatever reasons, whether it's time or they just like the McNuggets or whatever, right? And then there's a giant market of people that want they're cool with paying $300 for a meal at a really nice steak place, right? So you guys are targeting the latter, right? Where you want those folks on your list. All right, let's move on. So the charging stuff. The next thing I want to talk about is booking and how you book, like the mechanics of booking. And Benjamin, let's start with you. And by the way, you're looking blown out over there with your video.
Well, here, what can we do here? Sorry about
that. You're looking more and more ghostly as the show goes on.
Sneak in here like this. Is that all right?
There you go. Yeah, that's better. That's better. So when you talk about booking, what the mechanics of booking, from my standpoint, it could be as simple as a form on your website where people type in, I'm interested in booking you for a wedding and here are the dates, and then you get an email and you respond and start the dialogue. Or it could be as intricate as using one of those wedding CRM systems like TWiP or Dubsado or Honeybook or one of those. Benjamin, which one are you using? Like what's your process?
So I joined Dubsado about 5 months ago and still have yet to use their service. Like wedding season's just slowing down, so I'm gonna explore that here soon. But right now it's really simple. They jump on the website or blog, say, hey, I'm interested in getting information. This is my date. And then I will start the dialogue. But just as important as them interviewing me, I am interviewing them. I want to make sure this is a right fit. So I have a job form that I send them, say, hey, if you're interested, fill out this questionnaire. And it's got all sorts of crazy questions on there that help me get more information on this couple to see, if they're a right fit for me.
Yeah. Yeah, is that online? Or like when you do that interview, is it just through the questionnaire, or is it do you schedule a Skype meeting so you can see that they're not a lunatic? How do you filter that?
I have that question. I'm like, are you a lunatic? And they're like, no.
Lunatics will always say no, man.
The questionnaire is simply phase one. That is like, should this go farther? And at that point, we'll jump onto Skype or we'll meet over coffee or at the studio and get a sense for, is this the right fit? And I think for me, it's not just, I think we all have jobs that we take here and there that we're like, man, we just, need to hit our marks. But look, I got young kids. I've got an amazing wife. I call her my better three quarters. And I don't want to leave these people on the weekend for like a really difficult, terrible job. Right. Yeah. So I'm going to make sure that my leaving the house is, that it's a good gig for me. And it's just as important for the client too. I want them to be surrounded on their wedding day with people who they feel comfortable with and who are going to do a great job for them. And maybe it's not me, maybe it's someone else. Yeah.
And if it's somewhere else, just to continue that, because there's another question I had on my list about referrals. So if it is someone else, what's your process for saying, you know what, I may not be the right photographer for you, but John Doe down the street is in your price bracket and does amazing work. How do you handle that piece?
That's a great question. So I get a sense from them what it was that drew them to me. If it's a stylistic thing, then I want to try to refer somebody who is in kind of the same, has the same vibe as my look. And then from there, see who's available. If it's a price point thing, if they're like, hey, this is my max, I've got $2,500, then I'll look at, okay, who do I know in this network that's kind of in that area and try to match them with the best person. So I'm trying to provide them, rather than just saying no and never emailing them back, I'm trying to provide a service there that they'll remember. They'll say, hey, this person, this Benjamin Edwards guy couldn't shoot my wedding, but he was really sweet to work with and you should use him. Yeah. Yeah.
Troy, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, all those points are really good. For me, like on the booking side, I'm very fortunate that I have the software that I use for booking is called my wife, and
I'm sure she really loves being called software, man.
Yeah, she won't see this till later. Well, she could be watching it now. But all of our work comes by referral, and it's either from vendors or other brides, and they reach out to her directly. And so she takes a phone call, she takes an email, and she spends a lot of personal time with them. So we don't have any of that ability on our website because it's literally Margie. Margie talks to everybody. She vets everybody. We, does all the booking, and then they come over. They see our work. They see my crazy house, all the stuff I've built, and then if we can all get past that, we're good. Yeah. So that's how she does that. As far as referrals go, we actually give them a list of questions that you should be asking other photographers. And if somebody is unsure, we're like, hey, just here's some things to go ask. Here's some things to go look. We want to make sure that if you don't hire us, that you hire somebody else that's going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And it seems like you're sending work away, right? You're like, oh, you shouldn't do that. I can't tell you how many times we've gotten calls like 3 months later, be like, okay, so I had a talk with Mark and I really want you. You guys sound super sweet. I really want you. And we figured out a way to hire you.
Yeah.
And initially you weren't in their budget, but because you were so good to them and you treated them so well, gave them referrals or gave them questions to ask, they come back. That's your couple.
Hey, that's like what Sting used to say, right? If you love somebody, set them free, right? If they come back, then they're really yours. Yeah. So, Jesus, time is going fast. We're at 45 minutes in. We have 15 minutes left. I want to make sure that we're ending this on time. I want to drive through a couple key points that I wanted to get your both of your thoughts on. Troy, start with you. The social media piece of this. I know what you're going to say. Your quote software handles all that.
but I got to get some of that software. That's awesome.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it, man. I wouldn't recommend it. Stay with the better 3/4. I think that'll work better. But when you look at the social media and the sort of rising importance and the expectation that you're on social media. I mean, my barber expects me to book him through Instagram now, and I'm like, what? Dang, I'm getting older. So like, how do you guys manage that piece? Whether people are expecting to book you through social media or they're expecting to see photos that are ready for social media as part of the package. Do you guys care at all about Facebook and Instagram these days and Snapchat?
We only do Instagram and Facebook, and the only reason that we use it's a perpetual gallery. It shows a continuation of work, and it shows what I'm doing at the time. So and it's transparent. So it's super easy to scroll back and see what I've done. Mm-hmm. We post teasers from every wedding. So because we take 3 to 6 weeks after the wedding shot to produce the prints and the proofs, because we proof everything. Wow. So we release teasers. So for me, social media is nothing more than a way for people to follow me, see my work, scroll back in time, and go, wow, this guy's work is consistent over time. And that's it. I mean, we don't book anything because of that. That's just a foundational support for us to say, I like these guys. We're a good fit.
Yeah. Well, the social and social media. Benjamin, what about you? What's the impact of the sort of Instagram, Facebook on your business? And by the way, before you answer that, I love how your lighting is changing every time I go back. It's awesome. It is awesome.
Keep it fresh, you guys.
and Joe A7R2 in the chat room is saying your credibility is slipping because of your lighting. Joe A7R2, go look at his website. His credibility is not slipping, and he is gracious enough to join us for this show while his kids are making noise inside the house. So there's that.
Yeah. Amen. Nothing to prove.
There you go.
Social media has become incredibly important for me, and it's something that and we discussed this on our last interview. It's kind of become a necessity, an unfortunate one, because it sucks so much time from me. But I have found jobs through Instagram, through Facebook. It's a great way to stay connected to potential clients. And I think too, we talked about, who's your audience? And I think for me, my audience is twofold. It's the potential client, but I'm getting more into teaching. And so I am reaching out to photographers and connecting and networking with photographers because I'm going to start doing workshops. And so, I think it's a great way to stay in touch with other photographers, but I think you have to know who you're marketing to if you're using it for marketing. There are plenty of photographers out there who are trying to get clients, but they're just networking with other photographers, and that's not gaining them anything. Right. So for me, yes, I'm trying to build a following, but there's reason for that in hopes of, doing more and more teaching.
Yeah, in the interview that you and I did, Ben, we talked a lot about that very thing, right? Where it's are photographers marketing to the right people, right? Do you build an ecosystem or an echo chamber for yourself where, you're saying, hey, I did this great shot, look at this, or hey, I got this new Fuji camera, this new Sony camera, or Panasonic, whatever, I got this new camera, and look at this new lens I got. When other photographers may be impressed by that, but the bride who's searching for the right photographer is like, A7 who? Lumix what? Nikon what? They don't know what you're talking about. So you're shooting rounds over their head versus actually communicating directly to them. Which is critical in marketing this stuff. I want to transition that. So the whole CRM piece, or you talked about Benjamin, you talked about you've tried Dubsado, or you bought it, but you're about to try to transition into it. Troy has his software, but let's talk.
Which one's more expensive? That's what I want to know.
We both know which one is more expensive. Yeah, you pay a yearly fee. I think Troy's paying every single day. Every single day.
He pays it, daily fee. But
daily fee. But the rewards are better too. All right, so let's talk about the delivery side of this, right? So, and Troy, you sort of gave us a glimpse into your delivery process. You said you're actually doing physical prints or physical proofs like they did in the olden days versus here's a gallery online, make your selects from that. Take us through that and your decision process behind doing physical atom-based prints versus electron-based proofs.
We're tactile creatures, and I think that especially when you're sitting down looking at photos, it's great to be able to look at them on a computer or on your phone, but it's so much better when they get to hold them, and I love that effect. And if you really want to see it work, do a newborn shoot for a mother and give her a gallery she can look at online, or give her proofs. And when she's sitting there building her book, she's holding prints in her hand, like, okay, which one do I want? It's like that one in her hand. That's she doesn't want to let go of that.
Yeah.
Plus, we started that in film, and when we transitioned to digital, we really tried to consider, like, could I do this digitally? We really like the hands-on approach. So they have to come back to the house, which is our gallery. We hand them a box of prints. We sit down and go through some of them, some highlights. How was your wedding day? And so there's a lot of connection there. So every time they come over, it's another connection point for us. It's another touch point. And I just think the proofs, I want proofs. Yeah. I edit images all day. I don't want to pick images off a screen if I don't have to.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is really interesting. Benjamin, what about you? What's your flow, your proofing flow for your customers?
That's really cool too. I appreciate the tactile thing, like just seeing work in magazines and printing your own work. I think is so critical, and it's no different showing a client and letting them touch it and smell it and feel it. And but our situation is a little bit different. We are a destination. Like, I will go and travel and shoot destination weddings, but for the most part, Central Oregon is a destination. So the majority of our brides do not live here. And so it's difficult for me to meet with them in person. So for that reason, most of our stuff is done via gallery, which I'm super envious that you get to meet with folks and, like, continue that relational component, because it is hard to share this amazing experience with them on their wedding day, and then they jet off in the airplane and you may not see them for years or forever. So that's what we do. We do online galleries, and they can make selects from there. Any chance that we have to meet with someone in person, we do.
All right. Well, cool. All right. Well, let's wrap this up. We're getting close to the hour. I want to make sure we get the Q&A in. But let's transition into the picks of the week. So, Benjamin, for your edification, the picks of the week is a segment on This Week in Photo where you guys get to pick something to recommend to the This Week in Photo audience. It could be anything related to photography at all.
Sure.
So I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. Troy Miller, I have a feeling I know what your pick of the week is, but why don't you go ahead and tell the audience we'll call it your love affair of the year, basically.
It's right here. It's always close by. It's always here.
What is that? What is that piece of electronic and glass that you have there?
The Z. I'm getting all tangled up. It's the Z7.
The Z7, yeah, the Nikon Z7.
Awesome. It is wicked awesome. Yeah, it is super good. It is super good. And, I could come across sounding like a fanboy and like, oh, I'm all Nikon, rah, rah. I had tons of Sony gear. And so I've had Sony gear for like 5 years. So I've had a good hands-on with Sony, and it's amazing equipment. Mm-hmm. But this is Nikon. It fits in my ecosystem. It fits in my hand. I love the fact that all my lenses work. On top of that, it performs. So I'm very excited that it does what it does. And I just shot a wedding over the last weekend. I had 2 weddings, and I took it with me. And I'm just like, oh, this is heaven. I got to figure out a way to use this at everything,
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Let me be one of the first to welcome you to the present. So, in terms of mirrorless photography,
right.
welcome to the world of immediate gratification.
I know. I've always needed resolution.
That's true. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So we'll do another show. Micro Four Thirds sensors versus full frame sensors.
Yeah.
We know who's gonna win. So Benjamin, what about you? You have a pick of the week you want to share with us?
Well, I was gonna say the Z6.
Nice.
I'll use something different. It's going to be groundbreaking for my film video work. But beyond that, I would encourage the people to look at MIDI controllers for Lightroom. It will change your life. It will give hours back to you, days back to you. Yes, MIDI controllers. You can use Behringer.
What are you holding up there, Troy? I didn't see that.
Oh, this is palette gear.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, the palette gear. For the folks on the listening to the MP3, Troy's holding up a bunch of knobs, potentiometers that are all sort of gang together like a school of fish.
Loop deck, palette. You can kind of cobble your own together, which is what I did. You can go to Sweetwater, Musician's Friend, whatever, buy a B&H, buy a MIDI controller, and use Lightroom, MIDI to Lightroom. It's a free software you can download and patch your stuff together. And think about, like, instead of mouse movements left, right, dragging, clicking, it's just not very intuitive. You use sliders and knobs, and it'll give hours back to you each day. It's amazing.
It will, absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. That's a perfect pick of the week, and perfect first pick of the week. So congratulations. Now you're a veteran This Week in Photo host.
Off the cuff, too.
Yeah, off the cuff. Off the cuff. All right, cool. Let's dive into the questions. Troy Miller has been in there. Or not Troy Miller. What's the matter with my brain? Christopher Berry has been in there collating questions for us. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into them. The first one is from Nathan Pratt. Nathan Pratt says, at what point do you think you should raise your prices? I've been doing 4 to 5 weddings a year for the past 3 years and haven't raised my prices. Any tips to try and turn customers from just wedding to repeat customers? That's a good question. What do you guys think?
For the repeat customer, that's a good benefit for me, is because I'm in my local area and my customers come to me. So not too long after weddings come babies, and then come families and family portraits. So staying in contact with them, keeping up with them on Facebook, whatever, that's a great way to continue that relationship with them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Benjamin, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree. We've photographed seniors and then their weddings and then they have babies. So again, relationships, guys, it's all about relationships. And in terms of like when to raise prices, if you're booking every single wedding, you might want to look at maybe raising your prices until you're getting maybe 50 to 75% people booking. So that the idea is that you're shooting less but making the same or more.
Yeah. Love it. Cool. Next question is from Trevor Pinocchi. Trevor says, Troy mentioned he still takes 3 weeks to produce a book. How has the market responded to that with the trend towards immediate deliverables? He mentioned teasers. What do you think?
So teasers are after I shoot the wedding, and I have images, but I don't quite have the proofs ready for them. Then we put teasers out on social media so they can see them. What I was referring to 3 to 6 weeks is for them to get the proofs. It may take them longer to get the wedding album, and our wedding albums are built in person. They're hand built. They come to us again to build those albums. It's very carriage trade. It's very niche-y, and it's not for everybody. So for us, our clients really appreciate that hands-on experience from beginning to end. So by the time somebody books us to the time that they get their album, it could be a year, it could be 8 months, and they're good with it.
Wow.
Because it gives them time to save up for the book and to save up for additional pages and add wall portraits, things like that. And we let them work at their own pace. Life happens right after they get married. A lot of stuff happens.
Yeah.
So we don't rush them.
Interesting. Benjamin, do you agree with that long tail approach?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I think it has to be at the speed of the client. You get back from your honeymoon and life hasn't stopped. And it hasn't stopped for us either. So I think letting it happen at their pace is the way to go. And if it's a year, if it's 2 years, we've had clients come back 2-3 years later and say, hey, we're ready to get an album now. And
8
we're
years.
still there.
8.
Yeah.
I've done one 8 years. And you just go, okay, hey, great.
Sure.
Wow. What an industry. All right, here's another question. This one's from Trevor as well. He says, is there any portion of your business which you used to handle in-house, but in order to grow your business, you had to outsource? Benjamin, what about you?
That's a great question. I haven't outsourced yet because there's certain components that I just don't want to let go of. I wouldn't call it outsourcing, but I'm going to bring my son in next year, and he's going to handle a lot more post-production so that I can be out shooting, making money while he's editing the weddings from the summer. So I do have friends that outsource, and they wholeheartedly believe in it. I think it just depends on your situation. Do you have good software, or
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Troy, I know you outsource from yourself to your software, but does anything actually leave the house there, or do you do everything inside?
No, I do everything here. I really like to have control over my art. I mean, I really feel that it's important to me. Nobody knows why I put them in the backlight that I did, right? Because in my mind, though, I know, this is going to have this edit to it. So it's really hard to train that. If I had a son or a daughter, my daughter doesn't want to do photography. She does web and design, and she's brilliant at it. But I tried so hard. If you could have somebody close enough to you, a close personal friend or somebody that you could really convey that to, outsource a little bit. But I think that what we do is so personal. Yeah. I need to be in contact with it. I touch every image multiple times before my clients get it. So,
and I think from a client perspective too, if I hire Troy, I want to know that Troy is touching every bit of that. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason I hired him and no one else.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Love it. All right. Chris Berry has a question to throw in there. He says, how does the image quality hold up to the D850? I'm assuming he's saying, well, he addressed this to you, Troy. So the Z7 versus the D850.
The image quality on the Z7 is slightly better. I think I have a little bit more dynamic range, but I wouldn't say that it's huge. There's definitely a subtle difference, but I haven't had it long. I mean, I've only had it a few weeks, so I haven't really had it long enough to say it's enough to make you switch from one. I have both. Yeah. So they're both amazing. I just, the mirrorless is mirrorless. It has other benefits. So.
Right. Absolutely. All right, there's a couple more questions here. This one's from Good Dog. Good Dog says, Troy, have you done any divorces?
No, but I've done multiple weddings. I mean, I've done weddings with the same person more than once. Yeah.
Repeat customer.
Wow, repeat offender. All right. So,
right.
Benjamin, have you ever? Do people actually get divorces photographed? What's there to photograph? Signing some papers?
I don't know. Like, I can't even imagine having that documented like that. I haven't. Not personally, no.
Yeah. All right. Last question here is from Nathan Pratt. Nathan says, let's bring him up on the side. He says, does offering discounts lower or cheapen a brand?
I think it cheapens it. I never offer discounts of any kind. Really? So, yeah, I just don't. I mean, personally, again, it all depends on your market, and you really have to look at your clientele. So that's not a universal answer. That's just the answer that works for me. We never offer discounts because I'm always going to do what I do.
Yeah. Benjamin, what about you? Do you do special Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales on weddings?
Not really, no. But I do think we have to look at, there are different kinds of capital. You know what I mean? Like, if you're hitting your financial marks, maybe there's a destination wedding that you really want to do and they're super close, but they can't hit, your mark, and you want to go take the family on a vacation. Or I think when you're in business, you just have to look at, there's money, but there are different forms of capital that can be beneficial to you.
Perfect. All right, gentlemen, that's it. Excellent questions. So let's wrap this up. We're at the top of the hour. Where can, Benjamin, if people want to connect with you, see some of the stuff that you're working on, or hire you, I'm sure you're booked up through 2020, but if they're getting married after that, where should they go?
Instagram at Benjamin Edwards.
That's it.
And website, BenjaminEdwardsPhotography.com.
Perfect. All right. Troy Miller, what about you? If people want to connect with you, see what you're up to online, where should they go?
Imageryconcepts.com or on Instagram or Spicy Jello. on .com or Instagram. Yeah,
You gotta love
Check
spicy
that out.
jello. Spicy
Yeah,
jello. Look at that. Rolls off the tongue. Spicy jello. All right, guys. Thanks both of you for giving me your time this Wednesday evening. This has been informative. We literally could have gone for like 2 or 3 hours on this. The questions, you saw the question list, right? There's a ton of questions. Any one of them could have made an entire show. So we barely.
This is just part one.
Yeah, this is part one. We barely scratched the surface of this. Yeah, I think we'll have to have you guys both back to do a part 2, where we'll dive deeper into some of those topics. Maybe a part 3 and a part 4. All right, cool. All right, folks, that is it for this episode of This Week in Photo. Remember, if you want to stay connected to all things This Week in Photo, just head over to thisweekinphoto.com. We're also on every social media network, so just search for This Week in Photo over there. Also, if you want to join our community, which is thriving and robust, you can head over to TWiPpro.com. That's TWiPpro.com. And the podcast itself is available on multiple channels, from Spotify to Stitcher to Google to obviously iTunes, YouTube, etc., etc. So we make an attempt to be ubiquitous. So that's it for this episode of This Week in Photo. It is time to take that lens cap off. This is TWiP.